welcome back to Who Wants to Be a Missionary, episode 2. Today I want to talk to you about the myth of missionaries have it all together, when in fact, we don't have anything figured out. And I want to share with you a little bit about my story. First of all, on how God actually planted a seed in my heart for missions and how I ended up coming here full-time on the mission field. I started out going on short-term missions trips. My first mission trip was Belarus and Poland. Then I went to Costa Rica, and then I came to Colombia, and I ended up coming back and staying here full time. That was over 30 years ago. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about how that came about. My first mission trip was Belarus and Poland. And we always, on the missions trips, we always went and we did drama in the streets, and then we would minister to people that had watched the drama. I'd never gone outside of the country. I'd never been in another culture. I had never been around a different language other than what we studied in high school. I think I took French in high school, but I'd never been around any other kind of language. And we went to Belarus and we went to Poland, and I could feel God doing things in my life while I was on those trips. God began speaking to me, and that's something that I'll share in another time, another episode. But it was amazing how God began to move on my life, because He took me out of what I had always known and opened my eyes to see things in other countries that I never experienced. And I remember in Poland, I think this was probably the first time that God planted a seed in my heart to go full time on the mission field. Actually, we had some downtime, and we were sitting in a field with some of the young people that were a part of the church where we were ministering, and we were just hanging out with them. And somebody brought, I don't know if they were chocolate covered strawberries or there was some kind of dessert that they brought to us. I remember it so well, in a thermos. And we were so excited to get these desserts. They made them there in Poland. I don't know what they are. Don't remember the name of it. But as we were sitting in this field, and I don't know why I remember this so clearly. I think it was because that's the time that God began to move on my heart. And I didn't know what He was doing. I didn't have anything figured out in my life. And I actually didn't ever have a desire to go full-time on the mission field ever. I like going on short-term missions, but I was sitting there with my friend Lori. She was actually my roommate at the time, and we were eating our strawberries, and we just commented to each other, and we said, you know what? I think I could do this full-time. We should go back, pack everything up, and come back full-time. And we were seriously considering doing that. After that missions trip, we came back and went about our lives. And the following year, there was a missions trip to Costa Rica. On this missions trip, it was very unique. It was the first time I was around the Spanish speaking culture, and there were so many things that happened there. God just was moving on people's lives. People were getting saved. People were getting healed. And my life on each missions trip, I think that my life changed just a little bit more. And on this mission trip, there was something very unique that happened. First of all, I didn't speak Spanish. I don't think I could speak any Spanish at all at the time. And we were in a park after we had performed the drama, and we were ministering to different people, when a Costa Rican pastor, I don't remember his name. I wish that I still had his contact and I remembered his name, but he came over to me and he pulled me aside and he prayed over me. I can't remember if he prayed over me in English or in Spanish, and somebody interpreted it, but he prayed over me and he said, I just see you one day speaking fluent Spanish and preaching in Spanish. I almost laughed. I didn't laugh out of respect for him, but I thought that is the most outrageous thing that I've ever heard in my life. And one day in Colombia, I was ministering in Spanish. I was preaching in Spanish, and that day came back to my mind, and decades had passed, probably 20 years, at least 20 years had passed. And God reminded me of that word. And He reminded me what that Costa Rican pastor had said to me. And I was amazed that I was standing there in the fulfillment of that prophecy. after that, I don't remember if it was the year after or if it was I'm not sure when it was, but after that we had a conference in our church. It was an October conference, and there were many pastors that came from all over. I don't remember all of the pastors that came, but there were a lot of different pastors. And one night in one of the services, all of the pastors that were there lined up in front of the altar, and they had the people that was in the congregation to come up and stand in a line. Different pastors were praying over different people, so there were a lot of people there, and everybody got in a line in front of a certain pastor. Well, I was there, and I was in line with a pastor, and one of the ushers came over to me and pulled me out of that line and put me in the line where there was a Colombian pastor's wife. Never met her, never thought about Colombia, never thought about coming to Colombia. And she prayed over me and she said, I just feel like one day you're going to come to Colombia. And that just really stuck in my heart and stuck in my spirit. And I went and talked to our missions director and I said, hey, we should take a trip to Colombia. And he said, well, I just talked to the Colombian pastors and we're going to take a trip this summer. Do you want to be part of and leading that trip? And I was like, absolutely, I want to be a part of leading that trip. She had just prayed that over me. Then there was a trip planned and I was super excited. So I went and I found her and I said, we're going to take a trip to Colombia this summer and I'm going to be on that team and I'm so excited to be able to come to Colombia. And she looked at me and she said, no, mi amor. She said, you're going to come back. You're going to go on that trip, but you're going to come back and you're going to pack your bags and you're going to be here in Colombia, or you're going to be in Colombia for a very, very long time. Just let me tell you that I did not sleep for days after that because I thought, I don't want to go. I don't want to leave the United States. I don't want to leave my friends. I don't want to leave my family. I don't want to leave my job. I don't want to. And all of these things started coming into conflict with going full time on the missions field. And I went on that missions trip and I really wasn't planning on coming back and doing that. I thought that sounds like a great idea, but maybe it's for somebody else. And I went on that missions trip and I remember that there were a lot of things that happened before, so that it was almost as if something was trying to keep me from going on the short-term mission trip to Colombia. But I ended up coming here and it was an amazing time. And one of the days we had some downtime and I was at my host's house. I was by myself. I was staying by myself in one of the homes, and because the people from the church had taken, various members of the team, and we would stay in different homes. And I was resting, and I hadn't gone to sleep, but I was resting, and I had an open vision. I think this was probably, trying to think back, but I think this is probably the only time that I ever have had an open vision where it's almost like you're watching a movie play with your eyes open. And I saw what was a puzzle. And the puzzle was the outside, the framework of the puzzle was all finished. And the upper left-hand corner of the puzzle, there were a few pieces that were already put together. And I saw floating up from the bottom of the puzzle a huge piece of a puzzle that had the name Ibagué written across it. Now, Ibagué is the city where we were at ministering, and Ibagué is the city that I'm actually living in right now. And I saw this puzzle piece with Ibagué, and it started floating and floating and floating up from the bottom corner of the puzzle. And as it approached the part of the puzzle up on the left-hand corner that was finished, it came in and it got into place, or it became a part of that puzzle, and it turned into what was like a magnet. And it started bringing all of the other puzzle pieces up, and it connected, and I could see the puzzle starting to finish right there in that vision. Well, after that, I went home. I knew that was a vision from God that I was so sure at that moment of something that I had not been sure of, something that had actually unsettled me so much to think about leaving everything and coming on the mission field. And I was so sure at that moment, and I had such peace at that moment, that I knew that I needed to come back full time to Ibagué on the mission field. Went home, I talked to the pastors here. I went home and talked to my pastor in the United States. And that, I believe that was a June or July. And by December of that same year, I had turned in my 2-week resignation at my job. I had sold everything that I could sell, and I moved here full time on the mission field. And you know, the older that I get, I realize that faith isn't having all the puzzle pieces. Faith isn't knowing the next step. Faith isn't always knowing what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. But you know what faith is? Faith is trusting the one who does, trusting God to know that even though I don't know what that next puzzle piece needs to be, God has it all in control. Because I didn't have everything figured out before I came on the mission field, but God did. God knew exactly what was going to happen and when it was going to happen. And another thing that I think that goes in part with this is that missionaries don't have perfect lives. Being in ministry doesn't make you immune to painful situations. It doesn't make you immune to heartbreak. Missionaries experience loss. Pastors experience discouragement. And a lot of times I think that people think that because you have faith, because you've laid your life down in a ministry, and it isn't just missions, it's a lot of different ministries, that you don't walk through dark seasons. And you absolutely do walk through dark seasons. But sometimes faith looks like starting over. And I think it's been about 7 or 8 years now. In 2 years' time, I was a pastor in a church. I was a church planter, and I was a leader in ministry. And over a little less than 2 years, I went from being all of those things to being divorced, to looking for a job in a foreign country, and just trying to survive. And let me tell you something, that was a massive transition. It was a massive transition. And one of the humbling lessons that I believe that I have received in my life is to know that faith doesn't always look like climbing higher. Faith sometimes looks like starting over. Faith sometimes looks like not having the slightest idea what's ahead of you, but trusting God that He's going to put those next steps in front of you. And I honestly thought at that time that I wasn't going to make it. I didn't see an end to the dark season. I didn't see an end to what I was in, what I was going through, and I didn't know if I was going to make it out of that with my life, like physically alive out of that. It was a hard time. It was a very, very difficult time. But you know what? The crisis and the heartbreak and the uncertainty, it was very real in my life, but it did not have the power to cancel the call of God on my life. It didn't have the power to cancel the call of God. And whatever you're going through right now, whatever you're going through today, it does not have the power to cancel the call of God on your life. Because God, if He's called you, He's faithful to complete that work in you. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is something that I believe that's a misconception about missionaries, or a myth about missionaries that goes along with us having it all together, is that we have some kind of exclusive kind of faith, some kind of extraordinary faith. And you know, I don't think anybody has extraordinary faith. I think we serve an extraordinary God. And I think faith is a gift that God gives us. And the only reason that we can walk in anything extraordinary is because we have a God that is extraordinary. When people look at the missionary story or a mission story, it's easy to focus on the missionary. It's easy to focus on the missionary. It's easy to say, wow, I can't imagine doing what you're doing. I've had a lot of people even here tell me, why would you want to live here? Why don't you go back and live in the United States? And, people look at it and think, wow. But you know what? The real story, it's never about the missionary. The real story, it's never about me. The real story is about God's faithfulness. The same God who told Abraham to go into a nation that he would show him afterwards. Abraham didn't even know where he was going, and he went. That's the same faithfulness that God shows me on the mission field. The same God that provided for Moses, and he supplied everything that Moses needed, is the same God that provides everything that I need, that we need to minister here in Colombia. And it's always been about having an extraordinary God, not extraordinary mission, not an extraordinary person. I don't have extraordinary faith, but I serve an extraordinary God. So we don't have it all figured out. We don't have everything together. Our faith is weak a lot. My faith is weak a lot, and I work on my faith. And people may look at it and think, wow, you must have a lot of faith. You know what? I have a lot of God, and I look for God every day, and that's why I have God. And that's how you can have God in your life also. We don't lead perfect lives. We aren't spiritual superheroes, but we serve a God that is. We serve a God that's a superhero. We serve a God that's faithful, that provides day in and day out. And maybe you're watching today and your life feels like that puzzle that I talked about. You can see a few pieces. You can see the mistakes. You can feel the pain, and you got a whole lot of questions. But you can't see the whole picture. But you know what? No one can. No one can see the whole picture. God never asked me to have all the puzzle pieces together. He only showed me that one. He asked me to trust him. He asked me to trust him and to know that all of the other pieces would come in his time. God never asks me to understand everything he's doing, but he does ask me to trust in him with everything that I don't understand. And I choose to do that. I choose to have faith. I choose to trust in him when I don't understand. And you might not have the slightest idea of what your next chapter looks like, or what your next puzzle piece is, or what your next step is. But you know what? If you have God, you have the one that does. So just trust in him. Just trust in him for the next step, for the next puzzle piece, for the direction that you need to go today. So thank you guys for watching today. Just want to encourage you to keep seeking God, to stay ready in this time, because God is doing amazing things. And we are privileged and honored to be a part of what God is doing in the world. History is being made around us every day. So don't be discouraged today. Just know that God knows the next step. Just trust in him and know that he is taking care of you in every area and in every way. God bless you, and thank you again for watching.